3.5 years late and £4 billion over budget. London's Crossrail has finally arrived. But when it comes to the need for big new rail transport infrastructure, has the train now unexpectedly left the station? When this line was originally due to open in 2018, around 13% of people were working from home. The number of commuters has come back since COVID restrictions were lifted, but the proportion of people working from home is still double what it was a few years ago. So the question is this line still needed? The number of car journeys in Great Britain is some 4% below pre-pandemic levels, but for national rail journeys it's 25% down. And for the London Underground, passenger numbers are still around a third lower than before 2020.
And then having these platforms...
London's transport boss says despite the slump in tube travel, Crossrail will still be required.
Although we've pared back the initial ridership assumptions, I don't have a crystal ball. I do believe that London will bounce back, and already we're seeing 90% of normal ridership on the weekend. So I do think this will stand the test of time. We were originally planning to, or forecasting to have around 250 million riders by 2026, and we're now saying it's probably adjusted to somewhere between 170 million and 200 million, made up of a mix of international travellers, of leisure riders, and obviously office workers themselves. But we've looked again at the business case. It still absolutely stacks up.
But what about other big national rail projects, not least High Speed 2? High-speed rail is coming to Birmingham. You can see construction work is pretty well advanced, but now we know that the line will not go as far as Leeds. And the east-west high-speed line, known as Northern Powerhouse Rail, has been quite drastically scaled back. That's prompted accusations in the north of the levelling up agenda being betrayed. But in light of post-COVID commuter patterns, does that decision look, well, more reasonable? But for the head of the government's National Infrastructure Commission, the post-COVID fallout makes the case not for less transport spending outside London, but for a more devolved approach to decision-making.
Local politicians should, with their own population, work out what is going to be best for them and be able to deliver that, which requires financial support to a degree from the government, but work out what do our local people want. We in London can't decide what the people in Birmingham want. That should be decided by Birmingham politicians for Birmingham.
But another short-term rail transport headache for ministers is throbbing. The rail unions, including Network Rail signallers, are balancing on national strike action tomorrow, partly over pay, but partly in response to planned job cuts from the industry due to those lower passenger numbers. ScotRail, now under public ownership from Holyrood, today cut 700 services. There's talk from one union of the biggest coordinated industrial action on the railways since the 1926 general strike, and possibly involving 40,000 workers. Officials are looking at emergency plans to keep vital goods moving if that occurred. The standoff with the unions highlights another agonisingly difficult question about the future of the railways. Lower passenger numbers means lower revenues, which means cuts to services, which means the trains become a less attractive proposition in a kind of doom loop. But how long can or should the government continue financially propping up the railways in the hope that those passenger numbers return? Experts say ministers should resist the temptation to make pessimistic assumptions about what will happen to rail demand in the coming years.
We shouldn't knee-jerk react into spending less. We need to keep our confidence, because if we reduce the availability of public transport, then you will see a continuous decline of public transport. People want something which is reliable, affordable, regular. If it's not regular, you don't use it.
In a way, use it or lose it seems to be the bottom line for the UK's, at the moment, diminished band of rail travellers.